The biggest thing I love about the beautiful game is identity, an aspect embraced because without it, football would not be the world's game. So today, I'll be talking to you about a part of my identity. Before we go into this video, check out my Patreon. Every tier has a unique perk that will help involve yours a lot more.
Gorgeous.
Your contributions will help me produce more content like this too. For more information, go to the annotation above. And if we could reach 100 likes on this video, that'd be fantastic. The beginning of the story begins all the way back in the 17th century. During the French colonial period, in an effort to divert attention away from politics, the French encouraged the local Vietnamese to play football. The locals fell in love with the sport, and by 1908, a newspaper had reported the first ever match between two Vietnamese teams. 20 years later, the Annam Sports Administration was established in Saigon by a group of Viets full of national pride. In the same year, they sent out the very first instance of a Vietnamese national team to play in Singapore. Throughout the next decade, football in Vietnam exploded with clubs forming in every area of the S-shaped nation. But it wasn't until after World War II that those clubs became much more organized. However, just a year after winning independence, more difficulties awaited to challenge the progress of football in Vietnam. 1946, war. In 1954, after 7 long years of war ignited by a dispute about the future of Vietnam and the French Union, a Geneva Agreement resulted in the splitting of the northern and southern regions of Vietnam. As a result, there were now 2 separate national teams. The Northern Vietnamese had the Democratic Republic of Vietnam national team. North Vietnam mainly played in tournaments usually consisting of socialist countries. They played 24 times until 1966, won 6, drew 3, and lost a whopping 15. The Southern Vietnamese had the Republic of Vietnam national team. They were among the first 4 nations to participate in the first ever Asian Cup in 1956. South Vietnam participated in the first 2, in fact, and finished last both times. Unlike the North, the South have a gold medal to their name from the 1959 Southeast Asian Games. However, for Vietnam, division wasn't going to be the biggest obstacle in the development of football, because as the story goes, tensions further increased between the North and the South, which led to the Vietnam War. This is a highly controversial topic, so that's as political as I'm getting. Soon after the end of the war, both national teams merged to establish the Vietnam national team. With finally some cohesion, it was time for Vietnamese football to blossom into a beautiful lotus. But first, they had to overcome the crippling socioeconomic and cultural effects of the Indochina War, the Vietnam War, the Sino-Vietnamese War, and the multiple global sanctions against the nation that created an even worse economic climate. But behind the scenes, even though the North national team was kinda dog water, North Vietnam's region had a more consistent and well-structured league. And when Vietnam reunified in 1975, the league expanded to 40 teams to include all the southern clubs. Kind of like how the MLS does things now, there were 2 divisions separating the northern and southern clubs. The best finishing teams in each round then advanced to the final round to decide a champion. Vietnam's late 70s were kind of like Europe's early 20s. Most of the clubs that were participating in these leagues were basically just different industries. You had clubs like Công Nhân Giai Dong Hai Phang, Công An Ten Pho Ho Chi Minh, Công Cuc Dung Sat, and Zet Nam Dinh. Sorry for the terrible pronunciation, I'm not exactly a native and my dumbass never learned the language. Anyways, in 1980, a new reformed version of the 40-team tournament was created, the Vietnamese Pro League. There were only just below 20 clubs in this league, resulting in a massive shakeup for the Vietnamese footballing pyramid. This set the premise to redevelop Vietnamese football after a long period of wars, turning the gleaming picture of hope into nothing but a falsehood. Thanks in part to the Doi Mui reforms improving the economy, football in Vietnam also took a massive step in the right direction. Some clubs were transformed and more were able to be established. The improved economy gave young players better physical conditions, which in turn boosted Vietnamese football in terms of integration and grassroots. In 1991, the Vietnamese national team was reintroduced to the world when they participated in the Southeast Asian Games. In the Golden Dragons' first 2 competitions back, they didn't make it out of the groups though. Their opening 1991 SEA Games match against the Philippines was the first international match for the Vietnamese since 1975, a milestone showing just how far out of hell they had to climb. Vietnam attempted to qualify for the 1994 World Cup and failed. But hey, at least they weren't Macau. Soon after, Vietnam turned to foreign coaches, appointing Edson Tavares and then Karl-Heinz Weigand. Weigand and the Viets, sounds like a band, came so close to winning the 1995 SEA Games but fell short against rivals Thailand. The following year, Vietnam played in the first ever Southeast Asian Football Championship known as the Tiger Cup at the time. Just a quick quick side note, the Southeast Asian Games, or SEA Games for short, is basically just a regional version of the Olympic Games. The Southeast Asian Football Championship, well, is just football. These regional competitions can get a little confusing, so I just wanted to clarify things. That same year, the Golden Dragons faced then Champions League winners Juventus. The 2-1 loss, which is pretty impressive, became a watershed moment that helped boost the development of the sport. After the departure of Vigang, Vietnam appointed Trần Duy Long. He was fired after losing all 5 of his matches, which so happened to almost be the entirety of Vietnam's World Cup 1998 qualification campaign.
Don't take this the wrong way, but I need you to get the hell up out of here.
Come the 1997 SEA Games, Englishman Colin Murphy guided Vietnam to a 3rd place finish. He then left in 1998 to be Tottenham's Youth Academy director. The Vietnamese coaching carousel had seen about 9 changes in the first 7 years. Milan type beat. The 10th change was Austrian Alfred Riedel. In his first year, Vietnam made it all the way to the final of the 1998 Tiger Cup. They again fell short this time, thanks in part due to the Asian version of the Hand of God. But Riedel wasn't done. He brought the Golden Dragons to yet another final at the 1999 SEA Games. They lost to a familiar foe in Thailand, unfortunately. To close off the millennium, Vietnam failed to qualify for the 2000 Asian Cup. The 2000s edition of the Tiger Cup saw a 4th place finish for the nation, and soon after, the departure of Alfred Riedel. Replacement Dito from Brazil wasn't too bad though, as he managed 10 points for Vietnam's 2002 World Cup qualification campaign. It unfortunately wasn't enough though, as they finished 2nd and Dito left soon after. Portuguese coach Henrique Calisto was the new man in charge and had some new young stars to work with, including 6th all-time top scorer Nguyen Minh Phung, Pham Van Toiem, and Pham Van Nguyen. The side managed a 3rd place finish in the 2002 Tiger Cup, and guess what? Another coach left soon after. Alfred Riedel returned at the helm, and during his time, Vietnam failed to qualify for the 2004 Asian Cup. But they did manage to defy all odds and beat South Korea 1-0 away from home. To this day, it remains one of Vietnam's greatest football feats. But as the story goes, Riedel leaves Vietnam not even a year later, and Vietnam are now without a coach for the 13th time in 14 years. In the 2004 Tiger Cup, Vietnam were embarrassingly eliminated in the group stages under native coach Nguyen Thanh Vinh. There was one bright spot though, and it was the debut of 19-year-old Le Cang Vinh. He's currently Vietnam's all-time top scorer with a whopping 51 goals in 83 caps. Edson Tavares returned to coach Vietnam during the World Cup 2006 qualifiers. The campaign was nothing but depression, and yes, Tavares left soon after. For a 3rd time now, Alfred Riedel returned to coach the Golden Dragons for 2007's Asian Cup hosted by 4 nations including Vietnam. This was technically the first time since 1960, when they were South Vietnam, that the Vietnamese were participating in the tournament. Everyone expected an early exit from the 172nd ranked in the world Viets, but in Vietnam's opener against the significantly stronger UAE side, the Golden Dragons triumphed 2-0 thanks to some incredible passes played by midfielder Nguyen Minh Phung. The match is remembered as the Miracle of Hanoi, and it's been etched into the minds of Vietnamese fans for its significance in helping influence the future development of Vietnamese football. Vietnam continued to surprise even more and advanced out of their tough group. They were the only host of the 4 to do so. Unfortunately, in the quarterfinal, they lost to eventual champions Iraq, but the whole of a nation couldn't be prouder. This would not make Vietnam immune to lose coachitis though, with Alfred Riedel departing from the national team soon after. But remember Enrico Calisto from 2002? Well, he's back, baby. The next tournament in 2008 was the Tiger Cup, but with a new name now, the AFF Championship. Vietnam looked to have one of those tournaments again after a poor showing against Thailand, but they bounced back with this winner in the 86th minute against Malaysia.
We cannot replace him.
And then absolutely demolished Laos 4-0, advancing into the knockouts where they edged out Singapore in a 2-legged tie, thanks to this goal from Nguyen Quang Hai that was followed up with an attempt from the commentators to blow everyone's ears out. So now there was a familiar situation for Vietnam, one they had faced in the past only to come up short, and with it, the team that had broken Vietnamese hearts so many times prior, Thailand. 40 minutes into the first leg, Nguyen Vu Phung opened the scoring, and just 2 minutes later, the Thai defense capitulated with Le Cang, better than Ronaldo Luis Nazario de Lima Vinh, capitalizing and doubling the lead. The first leg ended with a 2-1 score due to a Vietnamese own goal, but Vietnam were within one leg of winning a final for the first time in their history. The second leg saw a different Thailand, one that went full guns blazing, scoring early to make it 2-2 on aggregates. By the way, no away goal rule. The Golden Dragons were looking like like the Lost Dragons with how poor their finishing was, but in the dying minutes of the match, Le Kaung better than Robert Lewandowski Vien headed home the winner as My Dinh Stadium erupted in celebration. Vietnam had finally achieved glory. Just when you thought all things were going up for Vietnamese football, it all came crashing down again. In 2010's World Cup qualifying, Vietnam lost 6-0 on aggregate to the UAE in the first round. But hey, at least they weren't Macau. 2011's Asian Cup qualifying was just as bad, with a 6-1 loss to China adding salt to the wound. Enrique Calisto said his farewells a few months after losing to Malaysia in the semis of the 2010 AFF Championship. He left a legacy behind that will never be forgotten by Vietnamese supporters. But now it's the 2014 World Cup qualifying campaign, and yet another failure from the Golden Dragons as they lost 4-2 in the second round. 2012's AFF Championship was even worse. Under new coach Phan Ten Hung, Vietnam were eliminated in the groups with their only point coming from a draw versus Myanmar. After the tournament, Hung was fired after the uninspiring performances. Things just got worse for Vietnam, losing 5 matches in a row during the 2015 Asian Cup qualifiers. But the performances on the pitch weren't the worst part about this decline. It was the incidents off the pitch. 2008's housing crisis threatened multiple top Vietnamese league clubs with bankruptcy due to financial mismanagement in the past. Corruption in football was running rampant in Vietnam as well. In 2002, a special police task force investigating the activities of the Vietnamese version of The Godfather, Nam Cam, gave a list to the Vietnamese Football Federation. This list featured around 20 players allegedly involved in match fixing. In 2005, there was a match fixing scandal involving multiple under-23 players during the SEA Games in the Philippines. This put a massive dent in the development of the game, as these were young players who had just thrown their potential starlet careers aside for greed. This included Pham Van Quyen, who would never play for Vietnam again. Not to mention, then chairman of the Vietnamese Football Federation, Nguyen Doc Kien, was convicted of fraud and tax evasion in 2012. All this drove fans away from the sport as they were disheartened by the lack of trust between them, their local clubs, and even their national team. In order to combat the issue, football betting was legalized in 2017, and we haven't really seen any incidents after. In 2014, Japanese coach Toshiya Miura took over Vietnam. His most renowned achievement was thrashing the Iranian under-23s 4-1 at the 2014 Asian Games. Many of those same players from the tournament were nurtured by Miura and called up to the senior team. Speaking of development, Vietnam faced Arsenal in 2013 and Manchester City in 2015. This was of course done to further accelerate the growth of football. Vietnam may have lost badly, but they did score against both sides. When the 2014 AFF Championship came around, new young refreshing faces popped up, like goalkeeper Chen Nguyen Mein, midfielder Vu Minh Tuan, and midfielder Ngo Hoang Tien. Vietnam were unfortunately eliminated in the semi-finals when they bottled the second leg against Malaysia due to a lot of defensive errors. Like, a lot. There was even an investigation by Vietnamese police to see if there was any match fixing of any sorts. There was none. Coach Miura also led Vietnam's 2018 World Cup qualifying campaign. They failed to qualify and he was sacked after being replaced with Nguyen Hue Tang. For the 2016 AFF Championship, there's a story I'd like to tell. Earlier we mentioned midfielder Vu Minh Tuan, and on December 1st, 2018, Minh Tuan experienced one of the saddest days of his life. His father, he loved so dearly, had passed away. This was in the middle of the championship, and Minh Tuan, a couple days before his father's passing, booked an emergency flight home to see his father one last time. After the mourning for his father, the midfielder returned to practice for the second leg of the semi-final against Indonesia. Vietnam had lost the first leg 2-1. During the second leg, needing a goal to save Vietnam's hopes, Minh Tuan scored just that goal. An incredible moment for the man who had such a heavy weight of emotions on his shoulders. Even if Indonesia did win in the end, Minh Tuan's strength is to be admired. Remember folks, tell your parents, your friends, that you love them, because you never know when you may never be able to again. Coach Hue Tang was sacked after 3 draws in the 2019 Asian Cup qualifiers and a shocking elimination with the under-23 team in the 2017 SEA Games group stage. And with it, fans started to lose hope again. But then interim coach Mai Duc Chung revived the lost spirit by leading Vietnam to a 2-1 win against Cambodia and then a 5-0 destruction of them a month later. Vietnam also managed to qualify for the 2017 Under-20s World Cup. Sure, they lost every single match and didn't score a single goal, but it's progress. Vietnam's mission to find a new coach was extremely hasty and somewhat forced. So when the federation brought in Park Hang-seo, former assistant to Gus Hiddink during the 2002 World Cup, many were quite skeptical. Park's resume was pretty average, with most of the clubs he managed being in the lower divisions of the Korean pyramid. Park didn't let the criticisms get to him though. His side drew against Afghanistan, which in turn locked Vietnam's place in the 2019 Asian Cup. This was the first time that Vietnam had qualified without being a host. There were still doubters though, with many seeing the Afghanistan match as a pretty uninspiring performance. But soon all the doubters were shut up when Park led Vietnam's under-23 squad to a runners-up finish in the 2018 AFC Under-23 Championship that saw them defeat the likes of Australia, Iraq, and Qatar on the way. There were celebrations out in the streets of every Vietnamese city after every emphatic victory. And remember, this was the under-23s. It didn't end there. Park said he ain't done yet. In the 2018 Asian Games, he brought the under-23 side to the semis and even defeated eventual finalist Japan in the groups. 9 of the players in the team came through the Hoàng Anh Gia Lai Academy, an academy affiliated with Arsenal FC that has played such a massive role in the development of Vietnamese football. Before we go any further, let's meet a couple of these new faces that were making names for themselves. Left back Juan Van Hao was one of the youngest ever players to feature for the senior team at just 17 years old. Midfield maestro Nguyen Better Than Zinedine Zidane Quang Hai was just 14 when he was called up to the U16 side. By the way, we're not talking about the Quang Hai from earlier in the video. This Quang Hai though scored 5 goals in the 2018 Under-23 Asian Cup, the second most, and he'd quickly become one of the most important senior players in the very near future. Winger Phan Van Duc, one of the most versatile players in the national team. Vietnamese Messi himself, Nguyen Công Phong, whose 4 goals helped the Vietnamese qualify for the Under-23 Asian Cup. Vietnam entered the 2018 AFF Championship with these youngsters along with multiple veterans of the senior team, including Nguyen Huy Hong, Nguyen Van Quet, and Nguyen An Duc. The Golden Dragons topped the group, defeated the Philippines, and then defeated Malaysia 3-2 on aggregate in the final to win their second AFF title in 10 years. And of course, the supporters went absolutely wild in celebration. Delirious fans on their bikes, blaring, honking, and hooting. Downtown Hanoi and plenty of the other cities were lit up in the flares of joy. And 2018, the most successful year in Vietnamese football, ignited the long-lost passion in many. And unlike the last time Vietnam won, there was a bright future ahead with so much young talent to develop for years to come. This looked to only be the beginning. The 2019 Asian Cup saw Vietnam draw in a group with Iraq, Iran, and Yemen. They lost their first 2 matches. In fact, I distinctly remember watching the Iran match at 5 AM with the flu. Add on top of the fact that I was on a Discord call with an Iranian friend. Yeah, that was fun. But a win against Yemen and a 3rd place tiebreaker with Lebanon that went all the way to fair play saw Vietnam advance to the round of 16 where they battled Jordan. The Vietnamese found themselves down after a brilliant free kick from Baha Abdelrahman. But then, Viet Messi himself, Nguyen Công Phong, equalized through a great volley the keeper could not keep out. The game went to penalties and Vietnam prevailed to advance to the quarters. Again, Vietnam defied the odds in the Asian Cup, but this one was special as it was away from home unlike 2007. Vietnam's tournament ended in a 1-0 loss to Japan, but there was nothing to be disappointed about. Vietnam, with their young core and inspirational courage, were brought to attention around the globe. In the same year, Vietnam also won the 2019 SEA Games thanks to top scorers Ha Duc Chin and Nguyen Dien Linh. World Cup 2022 qualifying was a time where Vietnam could show off how good they could be with their new young core. Vietnam drew into Group G, which was practically a Southeast Asian tournament plus the UAE. I mean, look at this group. This was so odd that the audience were laughing in disbelief. Vietnam started their campaign with a draw versus Thailand, followed by a win at home against Malaysia and a 3-1 win versus Indonesia away. The Viets continued their winning streak with an absolute firecracker from Nguyen Dien Linh to beat UAE for the first time in 12 years. After a hard-fought draw against the Thais, Vietnam were top of the group with 11 points. The next qualifier, though, wouldn't play until 7 months later due to COVID. In order to avoid any outbreaks, the rest of the matches were played in Dubai. That didn't stop the Vietnamese form, though. They destroyed Indonesia 4-0, with Dien Linh scoring his 3rd goal of the campaign. He scored his 4th in a 2-1 win versus Malaysia and made history scoring the most goals by any Vietnamese player in World Cup qualifying. There was a slight incident in the Malaysia match, though. Striker Nguyen Van Thuan was fouled in the box, which led to a game-winning penalty goal. The foul in question, Yeah. Following the match, the striker's Facebook was flooded with comments from angry Malaysian fans. In response, Van Thuan released this t-shirt with a silhouette of his controversial fall. And I can't lie, man, I kinda want one. Vietnam's unbeaten record came to an end in their final match against the UAE. The Golden Dragons fell down to second in the group, but it was still enough to make history and advance to the final round of World Cup 2022 qualifiers for the first time ever. A day before this recording, they just played their first match against Saudi Arabia. Hell, they scored within the first 3 minutes.
Quyết định cuối cùng thuộc về trọng tài, tuy nhiên khi bóng đẩy đùi bật lên tay, đặc biệt trong
Man, that's some bullshit! Vietnam has prevailed over the hardships of conflict, crisis, and even corruption. Not many nations can say they've done that. Their rise is nowhere near done, yet the current display is so inspirational to watch. But even with how good the team is now, nothing would have been possible without the enthusiastic support of the Vietnamese supporters. Vietnamese people have an undoubted love for football. The national team brings a sense of unity like no other for the country. There are mass celebrations every time Vietnam wins, and it's not just the main senior team. As stated before, they've celebrated under 23 wins, and I'm sure if there was an under 9 World Cup Vietnam were participating in, the support would be just as passionate. That kind of unique support from an entire country gives every player a sense of belonging and uplifting. It just goes to show how much the Vietnamese love this sport. The final round of qualifiers will give a lot of attention towards the Vietnamese team and their supporters. Vietnam's story is one that the football community would universally love, especially now that the Asian Federation has sold rights for World Cup qualifiers to multiple European nations and even the United States. More of the world will know about the unbelievable and untold story. Football is growing, and fast in Vietnam. This personally will be probably my favorite video essay I've made this year, and it really just comes down to the fact that I got to learn so much about football and Vietnamese culture. Of course, I've said this before and I'll say it again, I love making these video essays, but they do take a lot of time. And if you want to see more of them, please do consider supporting the Patreon. It'll allow me to have more resources on hand and also improve the video essays even more. But speaking of the Patreon, special thanks to our patrons, Lewis, Emmett Shea, Dominic Griffin, and Joseph Bonfante. You can follow me on my socials. Twitter is where I just tweet dumb things and also give some video updates. Instagram you can follow too. You can follow me on TikTok as well, still trying to get to 5,000 there. And why not? There is Twitch. But until then, I'll see you guys.